Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Untethered. Today is another topic, uh, which is not anything like the last topic or the topics before. It's something new. I do a variety show, kind of like. Today is on the topic of dead popes. Now, the reason why I did that is in celebration of the new pope that was appointed through the conclave in Rome. Now, the thing that I brought up to a lot of people that I know, or the people that I know on chat, on Element, is that this new pope is not only a U.S. citizen, but he's also from the state of Illinois. So, to all of you Catholics out there, you better hold on to your britches because this ride's going to get crazy. Okay, so if you think you've seen crazy when it comes to the Catholic Church and the Pope, you haven't seen nothing yet. I'm going to tell you right now, Illinois is it's a state that you'll never you just can't explain it. It's probably the weirdest part of the United States, to be honest with you. I predict that this new pope will most likely ride up to the Citadel with on a Harley Davidson with lightning on the gas on the gas tank, and he'll be dressed like Garth Brooks, listening to Sir Mix-a-Lot, most likely. If he's not listening to Sir, well, actually, it would probably be Sir Mix-a-Lot. I like big butts, maybe, but that's what you can expect when it comes to Pope from Illinois. Just telling you that because I know from personal experience. I live in Illinois, so I deal with these people on a regular basis. So today, the topic is, or the theme is, first off, our theme for today is Dead Popes Society. And our topic will be dead popes. Now, as the show goes on, people will show up and we will hear more about the Catholic Church other than the dead popes. So trust me, it's not just going to be about the history of all the popes who were murdered, which that's what I'm going to be talking about. All throughout history, all of the popes who had been murdered. But trust me, as we go on, the show's going to actually have more people coming in, hopefully, and we'll hear a lot more about these, or the Catholic Church and the popes and all of that stuff. Because I'll tell you one thing, I hang out with some interesting people, so hold on to your seats because hold on to your seats for this too, because it's probably going to go on a crazy ride. Now, I've got confirmation from Tan that he is at work. He says he will be heading home here before long. So he is a devout Catholic, and we can have him in here to kind of go through some of the stuff and maybe tell his thoughts about what's going on with the new Catholic Pope and the conclave that just took place. Now, one other reason why I wanted to make this topic too is because a lot of people have a misunderstanding about what actually goes on with this process and the reason why they do it. There is a huge history when it comes to Italy from the time that the Roman Empire fell all the way up until now. It's got a very, very interesting history that I think is going to come out as we go along with this episode. And there's a huge history. That's all I got to say, which involves the Catholic Church and things that aren't really seen or talked about really very much about what went on during the early days of the Catholic Church. There was a lot of brutality in Italy alone, not just with the Catholic Church, but they got swept up into it too. So just keep that in mind whenever we do get started. So with that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get into some of the popes that I found 11 of them actually. So I'm going to get into the popes that have died, and I'll start from the oldest. It's Pope John the Eighth. Now he was between 872 to 882 AD. Now Pope John the Eighth, who served as the Bishop of Rome for the from the year 872 to 882, is widely believed to have met a violent end through, though the details remain murky and are based largely on accounts written years after his death. He was one of the more active and assertive popes of the early medieval period, known for his efforts to defend Rome and the Papal States against the encroaching Saracens, or Muslim raiders, who had established strongholds in southern Italy. Pope John VIII appealed multiple times to the Carolingian rulers and other European powers for military support, but was often ignored or given only limited assistance. Frustrated by the lack of help, he eventually turned to paying tribute to the Saracens in the effort to buy peace, a decision that weakened his standing among the Roman aristocracy and clergy. Now, over time, his political position eroded as factions in Rome grew increasingly dissatisfied with his leadership. According to some chronicles, members of his own court or household, possibly even members of the Roman nobility, conspired against him. The most widely repeated account states that Pope John VIII was first poisoned and, when that did not kill him quickly enough, was then bludgeoned to death with a hammer or some blunt object. This combination of poisoning and beating suggests not only a determined effort to remove him, but also a deeply personal and violent betrayal. His death marked the beginning of a particularly chaotic and violent era in the history of the papacy, one that would see numerous short reigns, power struggles, and further assassinations. The murder of Pope John VIII is often cited as the first historically documented case of a pope being assassinated. Now, after Pope John VIII, from 1882 until 1896, there was no murders or assassinations of popes. In 1896, Pope Stephen the sixth, or maybe the seventh, became pope from that point on, 896 to 897, 1 year. Now, Pope Stephen VI was also known as Stephen VII, depending on the numbering used, and he died in the year 897 under violent and tumultuous circumstances that were uh, emblematic of the political chaos of the era. His papacy is most infamous for the so-called Cadaver Synod, a macabre of political motivated a macabre and politically motivated spectacle in which he ordered the exhumed corpse of his predecessor, Pope Formosus, to be put on trial. The corpse was dressed in papal vestments, seated on a throne, and subjected to questioning, while a deacon was forced to speak on its behalf. The trial concluded that the trial concluded with Formosus being found guilty of violating ecclesiastical law, his papacy declared invalid, and his body desecrated, stripped of its garments, and thrown into the Tiber River. The grotesque nature of the Cadaver Synod shocked both the clergy and the Roman populace, and it provoked widespread outrage. In the months that followed, the political atmosphere in Rome turned hostile against Stephen. His enemies, likely including both supporters of the late Formosus and members of the Roman aristocracy, who had grown weary of Stephen's erratic and vengeful behavior, eventually orchestrated his downfall. He was arrested and imprisoned, and not long after, he was found dead in his cell. Most historical accounts agree that he was strangled, though there are no detailed contemporary records to confirm precisely who was responsible. His death marked yet another grim episode in what became known as the Saeculum Obscurum, or the Dark Century of the papacy, during which successive popes were often installed, manipulated, or removed by force by competing factions within Rome. So now we come to the third one, which is Pope Leo V. Now, before I get into that, I want to also mention that I am going to be talking about Niccolo Machiavelli, which was later in history, but I also want to talk about the House of Medici, or Medici, I believe is how they originally say it. But with that being said, I do want to talk about these guys, and this is later on, but I am going to kind of give you a little bit of a history about what actually took place when it comes to politics and the atmosphere in Italy during the Dark Ages or the Middle Ages, however you want to say it. Not necessarily the Age of Enlightenment, but during specifically the Dark Ages and things of that nature. Now, with that being said, too, I also want to let everybody know that links to the stream are in the chat sections. You're more than welcome to join if you want to come in and be a part of the conversation. I've also got it posted up on X as well. So if you guys are on X and you want to come in and introduce yourself and say something, feel free to do so. You're more than welcome. Um, with that being said, I am going to go ahead and get to the third Pope, which is Pope Leo the Fifth, and he was uh, in 903. So Pope Leo the Fifth held the papal office for only a very brief period in the year 903, and his death remains one of the more obscure and contested events in papal history due to the lack of reliable contemporary documentation. He came to power during a particularly unstable period, which was marked by the deep entanglement of the papacy with the Roman uh, aristocratic families and the frequent interference of secular political forces in church affairs. Leo the Fifth was elected pope in July of that year, but he soon found himself imprisoned by a rival claimant known as Antipope Christopher. This usurpation may have been backed by powerful factions in Rome, although the exact political motives and alliances remain uncertain. While in prison, Leo the Fifth reportedly died under suspicious circumstances. The most widely accepted account is that he was murdered, likely strangled, to eliminate him as a legitimate rival to Christopher. However, some sources suggest he may have died from mistreatment or neglect while in captivity rather than outright assassination. There are no surviving detailed records of the events, and most of what is known comes from later medieval chronicles that often mixed rumor with fact. Interestingly, the legitimacy of Christopher himself was later questioned, and he was ultimately removed from the official list of popes by the Church. Regardless of the exact method of Leo's death, his fate illustrates how papal succession in the 10th century was often determined not by spiritual authority or ecclesiastical procedure, but by raw political power and violence. His short and tragic papacy reflects the broader instability that characterizes the Church during what historians often call the darkest era of the medieval papacy. After that, we come to the fourth one, which is Pope John the Tenth. Oh, you scared me.
Hey, Roger.
Hey, what's up? We made it
What's
up
up?
to we made it up to Pope John the Tenth. So
You're going quick.
no, actually, this is only the fourth one.
How many are there?
There's 11.
Oh, jeez. All right.
Yeah. Now
Did you
we
start with Did you start with Peter? Because he was murdered pretty brutally. he's the he's the first one that got murdered pretty brutally.
well yeah
Or
I,
are you
I,
covering just the ones that are murdered
I
by his own people?
well the ones that were officially like made Pope. Now Peter was they didn't call Peter Pope Peter. You know what I mean? So
Well, he is the first pope.
well, I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
go ahead and tell everybody about how he was murdered since we got you on here because that's
Well, I
kind
mean, so it's you want to go down the list, it should start with Peter, but even though we all know how he died,
mm-hmm.
or uh, tradition has it that he was crucified just like Jesus was, but with a twist. He was crucified upside down.
Right.
But
exactly.
yep.
No, no, it's
But then
important.
are you going down the history in order of history, or?
Now, the first recorded assassination of popes came by at 872 to 882, and that was Pope John the Eighth.
Okay.
And before that, I guess there was like this really, really cool freaking golden age where nobody murdered popes. You know what I'm saying? Either that
Only the
or
Roman,
yeah.
only the Romans.
So, but
Yeah, if you don't count that as murder, then okay.
well, I mean, it's like freaking you stop and you think about it though. You're actually a Catholic, so it was best that you was the one that brought up um, Peter. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So I mean, like,
Yeah, I mean, so right, the all these popes that you brought up that were murdered,
uh huh.
they are new to me, so I don't know anything about them. I would need to do some looking up just to double check the story,
Mm-hmm.
which you haven't given me much time to do.
Okay.
So as soon as we get home, we're gonna do this on the fly. So yeah, hang on to your horses. So while I'm driving home, you can just continue with whatever you have, and then we can go back if we need to.
Well, since you're driving home, I know you probably didn't hear my message to you guys as Catholics, and this is something important that you need to understand. Okay, like because this Pope is coming not only from the United States but from Illinois. So,
Okay, from
so
your hometown, is it?
well, my home state. But
Home state.
when
Okay.
when he comes in, when he comes to Rome, expect him to come on a Harley Davidson with stripes, freaking
He's
running
he's
down the gas tank, and he's
he's
going.
already there, man. He's already
He,
there, and he's not going home. It looks like
well,
he's gonna be stuck there for the rest of his life.
he'll eventually be dressed like Garth Brooks at some point,
I doubt it. I don't
and
think so.
and he'll be listening to Sir Mix-a-Lot. Most
I
likely,
don't. You know, it feels like that he comes in as the cardinal from Chicago, from Illinois, but then he comes out a completely different person.
no, you
We'll need to wait over time to see how his, Illinoisian upbringing will have any impact on his papacy. But so far, I haven't seen any sign of him being bishop from the United States at all. Do you?
well, not yet, but it's all
Yeah,
media right
yeah,
now, though. You got to
yeah,
realize.
yeah,
I mean, that's
yeah.
all flash and everything. Like right
Mm.
now, they're probably putting him in front of every camera they can, and
Well,
he's.
yesterday, no, I mean not the camera, but so there's a news coming out of the Vatican news
Mhm.
where they televised the daily mass. And this morning's mass was the first time I heard him speaking English. Right?
Yeah.
So
Now you said in chat
interesting.
you said in chat earlier that you think the reason why he didn't speak English in the first one was probably being rebellious against Donald Trump. So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
you believe that?
Uh, Kind of. I don't want to think that his election was influenced in any way by Donald Trump. Uh, and maybe he's trying to send out that message
Yeah.
that uh,
Well,
they elected the man, not the policy, whatever he might have done in the past. But it does have some bearing on their decision, I'm sure, right? I mean, he's
yeah,
been, even though he's the bishop from the United States, he's been abroad for extended period of time. He's been all over the world, and uh, his latest post was the head of the dicastery for the bishops in Rome. So
Now, when it comes to him though too, he is actually conservative though, right? I mean, from
he,
everything I've heard, he's actually a conservative.
yeah, yeah, seems yeah, he seems like a conservative, and he's a kind of a quiet spoken and like he's got a shy demeanor to him. He's not like outspoken like some of the other cardinals in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, in some circles he might be known, but he went right under the radar for me in terms of who are the prominent bishops from the United States, because he's like he might have done a lot of good work for the church, but he's all under the radar. He's like in a humble kind of way, right? He's very much unnoticed
Mm-hmm.
by the media.
I've actually heard from people that I've known here, and they say that he's actually a nice guy. I don't know
Hmm.
how true that is. It's just from hearsay, but
Hmm.
most of the Catholics that I know around here say he's actually a pretty nice guy. So
Hmm.
um, I don't, and like I said, I don't know for sure how that is. I mentioned that to Nancy earlier, and she started talking about like all the conspiracy and stuff. So she's
Yeah, this it would have been good to have Mr. Robot on here in this show. He would have accompanied you well on
well, I mean,
on this episode.
nobody really wants to talk about the deaths and stuff, and like I love talking about cool stuff like this. You know what I mean? This is actually part of history that most people don't know about. And
You brought up Eusebius quite often
yeah.
in your talks. He wrote quite a bit of work in early church history.
Hmm. Yeah, actually,
Have you looked into his work?
actually, that's how I got most of my information about the Phoenicians and stuff, because the only thing surviving from the Phoenicians back during those times was stuff that was written by Eusebius.
Hmm.
Uh, so
Okay.
even though he was against the pagans, he still was the one who wrote about it and wrote material about it. You know what I mean? So yeah,
Yep.
uh, he was. They were actually able to draw off of his writings to get a little bit more of a good picture when it came to the Phoenicians and stuff. So I thought that was interesting.
Okay.
But yeah.
All right. Let's go back to your list. Continue with your list then. I
Oh,
mean, we just we can eventually get to the current state, but let's go back in history first.
okay. So the fourth one is Pope John the Tenth, and that was between 914 and 928.
Okay.
Now, Pope John the Tenth served as Bishop of Rome for the year 914 until his death in 928. His pontificate,
Pontificate was how long?
his pontificate was marked
He is
by both.
the number what number in the order of
No, I don't know for
in the
sure what
papacy?
number he is, but I know that his
Okay.
pontificate was marked with both political ambition and a violent end. And he
Okay.
is remembered as one of the more assertive and capable popes of the early 10th century.
Okay.
Now, John came from Rovana and rose through ecclesiastical ranks with the support of influential political figures, particularly the powerful Roman noblewoman Theodora, or noblewoman Theodora,
Okay.
who who is often claimed to have used her influence to secure his elevation to the papacy. Now, some sources, though colored by rumor and partisan bias, suggest that she may have even had a personal relationship with him, though
Mm.
that claim remains speculative and unproven. Now, as a pope, John X played an active role in secular politics and was deeply involved in efforts to unify Italy under a strong monarchy, supporting various rulers, including Berengar of Friuli. I always have a hard time with those Italian names. And later,
Okay.
Hugh of Arles. He also achieved military success by organizing a coalition of Christian forces against the Saracens in southern Italy, culminating in the victory at the Battle of the Garigliano in the year 915. This was a significant accomplishment that earned him prestige and reinforced the papacy's political relevance. However, his growing power and influence made him a target of rival factions in Rome, particularly the powerful Theophylact family, the Phylact family, and their daughter,
Okay.
Marozia. Now, these aristocratic figures effectively controlled much of Roman political life during this era, and they sought to dominate the papacy for their own ends. After John aligned himself with Hugh of Arles and attempted to consolidate political control, Marozia viewed him as a threat to her family's dominance. In the year 928, John X was seized by force, likely on Marozia's orders. He was imprisoned in the Castel Saint Angelo, the former uh, mausoleum of Hadrian that had become a fortress of papal no, a fortress and papal prison. Shortly
Critical
there,
prison. Okay.
shortly thereafter, he died in captivity. Most historical accounts agree that he was smothered to death with a pillow, a method commonly used at the time to commit murder while minimizing physical evidence.
Who
His
did
de-
it?
his death. Well, most of them they don't really know. Like
Don't know.
the
Okay.
documentation on a lot of them are just dismal. Um, his death was part of a broader struggle for control of the papacy, and it marked a particularly dark moment in what is often referred to as the Saeculum Obscurum, or the century
Okay.
of papal corruption and violence dominated by Roman nobility.
So who imprisoned him though?
That is what they were saying, that it was this woman Marozia.
Okay, so it's again it's internal rivalry,
Well, in Italy during that time period, there was a lot of there was a lot of
a lot of factions.
factions, yeah, and families, huge families.
Okay.
Now,
Okay.
um,
This is after the fall of the Roman Empire, right?
right now, this is also, you also have to take in Roman nobility from the times of the Roman Empire too. They were still, a lot of these Roman nobility still had a lot of power when it came
Right.
to their families. You know what I mean? After the
Sure. Yeah.
Rome
Yeah.
fell.
Yeah.
Now, Pope John X's assassination uh, highlights how deeply the papacy had become enmeshed in the brutal political machinations of medieval Italy, is what it goes on to say. But that's kind of what's going on here. You know what I mean? Like these popes had to basically coordinate with freaking these factions that were part of the old noble families and plus powerful families that were also involved. Um,
Mm.
and this would probably be the best time for me to bring up the House of Medici or Medici, or I don't know exactly how they pronounce it, but have you ever heard of them?
No, I don't think I have. Maybe when I look
Okay.
them up, it might ring a bell, but it doesn't sound familiar.
Now, the House of Medici was an Italian banking family and had a political dynasty that first consolidated power in the Republic of Florence. Now,
Florence, okay.
now uh, Florence actually was probably the first republic, actually, because I know that Rome and Greece both wanted a republic. To be honest, I'm not sure on that one, but
Mm.
I know they were actually a republic, and this family is one of the families, and this is actually later on in history after Pope what's his face after
John?
after Pope John, yeah. But this is basically, yeah, Pope John the Tenth. But this is basically the mentality that was taking place at the time within Italy, okay, where these families
Okay.
dominated the political schemes. They were very, very violent. It was almost expected. Um, it was kind of expected for a Roman man to freaking, cut his enemy's throat in the streets. You know what I mean? Like
Okay.
if you had an enemy and you had a chance to kill him, you could kill him right there in the middle of the streets and not even get arrested for it. Basically, this was the kind of environment that was there.
Mm.
Um, so that's what was taking place at that time. So a lot of these uh, family members were being murdered too, as well as popes and members
Right.
of the papacy. So um,
Okay.
that that's something that I did want to bring up, and then like Machiavelli,
Machiavelli, okay.
uh,
Yeah.
Niccolo Machiavelli is another good example of it. He wrote a lot of stuff that people should really take a look at when it comes to the kind of politics that took place during his time. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
um, he talks a lot about tyrants and how
Mm.
they how they should seize and maintain power and things of that nature. So his whole political view was really kind of uh, evil, basically. He advised
Mm.
rulers to like engage in evil when politically necessary.
Mm.
Whenever it required it. At one point, he stated that a successful founder and reformer of government should be excused for killing other leaders who would oppose them. What I mean? Like he
Mm.
openly states it, and
Mm.
that was something that really stuck out to me.
Okay.
Um, and if I had to suggest anything, I would suggest people read *The Prince*. It was written by him, but that's that's one of the many things that. And don't get me wrong. I mean, I really do want to get more into this and research it, but I haven't been able to do it very, very well, to be honest with you, because things during this time period get freaking crazy. Okay, like
Mm.
um, there's a reason why I like ancient history over what I consider modern history, and this is one of them. You know, um,
Oh,
you people don't realize how crazy things got after freaking uh, we started getting into Greek and Roman history. You know, after
pretty violent, right? Well, I mean, I've seen.
well, the violence got insane. You know what I mean? It got just
Mhm,
completely insane. History became skewed, um,
mhm.
and it's like information was lost. I mean, tons of information. The things that people think we know about the Middle Ages and the Dark Ages isn't really freaking fact. They're just, word that was passed down from generation to generation. But there's no actual documented evidence backing up a lot of what's being said because of
Yeah, is that odd though? I
yeah,
mean,
it is pretty odd.
there must have been some written records, but they got burned or lost or something.
Destroyed most
Because
likely.
they surely have means to keep their written records, right?
Well, I've noticed
We got
that.
some. We had some pretty uh, popular Roman historians whose uh, writings even mention Jesus, right? Uh, so there's some of that there.
Hmm.
So, I mean, some people who deny that the Jesus even exists, we have those records to prove otherwise.
Well, then
So,
you have you the whole deal about it is when it comes to like the first, I'd say, 500 years of the Roman or the Holy Roman uh,
mm,
Empire,
mm,
or, everything seemed to be uh, well from I'd say up until about 500 AD. Everything seems to be where a time period where people like to chronicle things and write things down.
right,
You know, but like
yeah,
after that point, man, just things started to deteriorate. You know what I mean? Things started to
mm,
fall apart. All of a sudden, information was getting destroyed, like you said, um,
mm,
and especially when it comes to Italy, right here, you have got tons and tons of people who are destroying shit and destroying history at that time
mm.
period. So it's hard to really tell if anything was even written about this stuff or if it was just destroyed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's very, very interesting. And
Mm,
these popes, okay, these
mm.
popes were put into freaking power and then murdered. I mean, these I'd say the longest I've found so far goes to, I'd say, at least 30 years difference between each time a pope was murdered.
Do you think these kind of records should still be stored in the Vatican archive somewhere,
Mhm.
right?
Well, I mean, I still have my opinions about the record keeping there too, because like these conclaves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, were
Yeah,
these
I don't think they keep records of the conclave, right? They vote, and then after they finish voting, the ballots are burned.
right?
They're
And see,
destroyed, so it's very secretive.
and originally we really don't know how it was performed. Okay, now did they take these people, put them in, and say the last one standing is the pope?
Well, I don't know how the process has been developed to the point where it is now, but I mean,
I mean, like in the beginning, you know what I mean? When they had
yeah, yeah.
when they had this brutal.
Well,
Uh,
so in the Acts, in the Acts of the Apostles book
Uh,
in the New Testament, we read about a little bit of that process already when uh, when Judas abandoned his post and went to his own place,
mm-hmm.
and then they had to choose a replacement for him, right?
Yeah.
If you remember. So they took Lot, which means they did the voting. So the 11 of them voted for who should be the replacement of Judas. So so there's a little bit of that process right there. So
Okay.
and they voted for Matthias, and Matthias became Judas's replacement.
But he, he, he,
So
he, he was one of the first to die, though, too, wasn't he? I believe so.
I'm not sure he was. I think Stephen was the first one. He got killed by Paul.
Okay.
But wait, Stephen wasn't one of the 12 though. So maybe you're right. I'm not sure about that.
Now,
We can trace
go.
the history of those 12 apostles. They all died horrible death except for John. So,
Now, when we talk about John, now we can go to Pope John the 11th. Okay. So
all right.
now Pope John the 10th, he
So, did you mention? Yeah. So you briefly said he was died. He was poisoned and then bludgeoned after the poison didn't work. Uh,
now no Pope John the 10th str- uh, was suffocated with a pillow. He got the easy way.
oh, oh, John the Eighth was the one that was poisoned.
No, Pope Leo the Fifth, he was the one I believe who died under suspicious circumstances. Now, I believe he was the one that was yeah. It says that he no hold up, which one was it? I believe it was him or it was Stephen actually. Wait, yeah. Now that's weird that you said that because we were just talking about Stephen. Um, now,
Stephen was just a deacon. He wasn't a pope, though.
no, Pope Stephen the
Oh
Sixth,
no, there's a
maybe,
Pope Stephen. Yeah, yeah, different one.
maybe, maybe the seventh. Uh,
Okay, okay.
now he was weird. Wait, no, no, no. He was really the first one. The first Pope John the Eighth is the one who was. Yeah, this is Pope John the Eighth between 872 to 882.
Okay.
Now, what happened with him is the Muslims were at the southern part of Italy, and instead of fighting against the Muslims, he decided to pay them off for
Hmm.
so that they would leave, back off. So he did that, and a lot of people who were around him didn't agree with it. So they didn't particularly like the idea that he was instead of defending Rome, he was paying the Muslims to basically becoming a fiefdom. I would say is what that sounds like. Um,
Okay.
and they were called the Saracens uh, and or Muslim raiders. Now, when over time his political position began to erode, and like different factions in Rome grew like dissatisfied with his leadership. Um, so what they decided to do was poison him. Okay, so first they
Okay.
poisoned him, and then when that didn't kill him quick enough, they decided to bludgeon him to death with like a hammer or some other kind of blunt object.
Who are they?
They say that it was possibly members of his own court or even household. Um, And
It's,
they also say that it could have been members of the Roman nobility who conspired against him.
eh,
So that was the first one. So we got to hear about the violence straight up from the get go, you know. And it's like, you know, everybody today hears about the mafia and how rough and hard they are, and they don't understand that these people came from that kind of background, and that's the way that country has always been. You know what I mean? The way the mafia runs, that's straight up their way of being. That was their way of being for the longest time. So um, that's how they dealt with stuff. Um, so yeah.
okay, I'm home. Keep talking. Give me a few minutes. I'll get set up with them on
Okay.
my computer shoe.
So what I'm going to do is do the fifth one, which is Pope John the 11th, between 931 to 935. Now, Pope John the 11th served as the Bishop of Rome from the year 931 to 935 during a period of intense corruption and aristocratic control over the papacy, commonly known as, like I said before, the Saeculum Obscurum. Now, his rise to the papacy and his eventual demise were closely tied to the power struggles of the Roman nobility, particularly the Theophilate family, which dominated Roman politics and ecclesiastical life at the time. Now, John the 11th was the son of Marozia. Marozia, interesting. She was the one who killed, or was possibly the one who killed Pope John the 10th. And after he died, Pope John the 11th was her son. And he was supposed to be a formidable, or no, she was supposed to be a formidable Roman noblewoman who wielded enormous influence in the city. Now there has long been controversy regarding his paternity, though. Now, while officially he was the son of Marozia's husband, Alberic the First of Spoleto, many medieval chroniclers claim that his biological father was actually Pope Sergius III, suggesting that John the 11th may have been the product of a scandalous liaison between Marozia and Sergius. Whether or not this is true, it highlights the deeply compromised state of the papacy during this era. After being installed as pope through the efforts of his mother, John the 11th held little real power. Marozia ruled Rome as a virtual queen, and it was she who dictated much of what happened during his papacy. However, her dominance was short-lived. In the year 932, Marozia's own son, by Alberic, known as Alberic II, staged a coup. He deposed Marozia, took control of Rome, and placed his half-brother, Pope John the 11th, under house arrest. From that point onward, John had no real authority and was essentially a puppet under Alberic's control. The final years of John the Eleventh's life were marked by political impotence and isolation. He remained imprisoned in the Lateran Palace until his death in the year 935. The exact cause of his death is not clearly recorded, and historical sources offer little detail. Some later chronicles suggest that he may have been poisoned or otherwise murdered, possibly to remove a figure who could have posed a threat to Alberic's continued rule. There is no definitive proof. Whether his death was natural or the result of foul play, it marked the end of a papacy that had been overshadowed from beginning to end by the ambitions and violence of his own family. Pope John XI's life and death serve as an example of how the office of the Pope during the 10th century was frequently reduced to a pawn in the hands of Rome's most powerful noble clans. That sounded pretty damn nifty. What do you think? You still there, Tan? He's getting everything set up and ready to go. Now, with that being said, I kind of went over some of the stuff that I wanted to mention before when it comes to Niccolo Machiavelli. Now, let me go ahead and read some of this. Niccolo de Bernardo de Machiavelli was a Florentine diplomat, author, philosopher, and historian who lived during the Italian Renaissance. He is best known for his political treatise, The Prince, to Principi, written around 1513, but not published until 1532, 5 years after his death. He has often been called the father of modern political philosophy and political science. For many years, he served as a senior official in the Florentine Republic with responsibilities in diplomatic and military affairs. He wrote comedies, carnival songs, and poetry. His personal correspondence is also important to historical and scholars in Italian correspondence. He worked as secretary to the Second Chancery of the Republic of Florence from 1498 to 1512, when the Medici were out of power. After his death, Machiavelli's name came to evoke unscrupulous acts of the sort he advised most famously in his work, The Prince. He concerned himself with the ways a ruler could survive in politics and knew those who flourished engaged in deception, treachery, and crime. He advised rulers to engage in evil when political necessity requires it, at one point stating that successful founders and reformers of government should be excused from killing other leaders who would oppose them. Machiavelli's Prince has been surrounded by controversy since it was published. Some consider it to be a straightforward description of political reality. Many view The Prince as a manual teaching would-be tyrants how they should seize and maintain power. Even into recent times, some scholars, such as Leo Strauss, have restated the traditional opinion that Machiavelli was a teacher of evil. Even though Machiavelli has become most famous for his work on principalities, scholars also gave attention to the exhortations in his other works of political philosophy. While less known than The Prince, the Discourses of Livy has been said to have paved the way for modern republicanism. His works were a major influence on Enlightenment authors who revived interest in classical republicanism, such as Jean Jacques Rousseau and James Harrington. Machiavelli's political realism has continued to influence generations of academics and politicians, and his approach has been compared to realpolitik of figures such as Otto von Bismarck. Now, Jean Jacques Rousseau is a French philosopher, and I will tell you right now, he is not John Locke. Okay, if you want good, solid, classical republicanism and liberalism, read John Locke. Jean Jacques Rousseau is one of those guys who doesn't believe that the individual should own private property, that it should belong to the state. I've done some research on him. But after that, I wanted to talk about the House of Medici, go back over that, because this is a family that was mentioned here in this article. And you need to understand the House of Medici if you want to understand the atmosphere that was taking place during this time period. Now, the House of Medici was an Italian banking family and political dynasty that first consolidated power in the Republic of Florence under Cosimo del Medici and his grandson Lorenzo the Magnificent during the first half of the 15th century. The family originated in the Mugello region of Tuscany and prospered gradually in trade until it was able to fund the Medici Bank. This bank was the largest in Europe in the 15th century and facilitated the Medici's rise to political power in Florence. Although they officially remained citizens rather than monarchs until the 16th century. In 1532, the family acquired the hereditary title of Duke of Florence. In 1569, the duchy was elevated to the Grand Duchy of Tuscany after territorial expansion. The Medici ruled the Grand Duchy from its inception under the builder Cosimo I until 1737, with the death of Guillaume Gaston de Medici. The Medici produced 4 popes of the Catholic Church. That would be Pope Leo X, Pope Clement VII, Pope Pius IV, and Pope Leo XI, and 2 queens of France, Catherine de Medici and Marie de Medici. The Medici's Grand Duchy witnessed degrees of economic growth under the early Grand Dukes, but was bankrupt by the time of Cosimo III de Medici, which is 1670 to 1723. So I'm not going to go further into that, but that kind of gives you an idea right here. Now, I mentioned Pope Leo X, and Pope Leo X was between 1513 to 1521. Wait, no, I haven't gotten to Pope Leo, I don't think. Have I? Yeah, I haven't gotten to Pope Leo yet. Now, he is up next, I believe. Let me double check and find out. Yeah, because I believe I have just done Pope Stephen VII. Yeah. No, Pope John the 11th is what I did. So Pope Leo X is on the list, though, and we will most definitely get to him, I'm pretty sure. No, actually, he's not on the list. He just stood out to me. Pope Leo sounds familiar. There we go. But anyhow, I wanted to read those to kind of give you an idea of what's going on. these were very, very powerful families that were influencing not only Italy, but also the Catholic Church as well as the rest of Europe, France particularly. So I did want to point that out and make sure everybody understood that. And like I said, if you want to dive into this more, learn about the House of Medici or Medici, however that's pronounced, and Machiavelli. Machiavelli is very interesting. And I understand that there is a difference between Machiavellian and the actual guy Machiavelli, because it was a term that was coined by psychologists that they eventually started calling it like a Machiavellian kind of persona or personality. That's a different thing altogether. But I just wanted to point that out and let everybody know that. Okay, so I have gotten through Pope John the 11th. Now we come to Pope Stephen the 7th. Wait a minute. I've already covered Pope Stephen the 7th or 8th, didn't I? Okay. So now I have Pope Stephen the 7th, maybe the 8th, 1928 to now I'm getting a little confused here. Okay. So now I am going to go ahead and get with Pope Stephen. Um, okay, here we go. So Pope Stephen the 7th, possibly the 8th. Pope Stephen the 7th, also known in some records as Pope Stephen the 8th. Wait, yeah, there we go. I've already read that one. So I'm on number 7, Pope Benedict the 6th. Pope Benedict the 6th served as a bishop of Rome from the year 972 until his death in 974. During a period when the papacy was caught between the competing influences of the German Holy Roman emperors and the powerful aristocratic factions in Rome. His election to the papacy was strongly supported by Emperor Otto I, who sought to assert imperial control over the church in Rome. Benedict was seen as a pro-German candidate, and his elevation did not sit well with many of the local Roman nobles, who resented imperial interference in ecclesiastic affairs. When Emperor Otto I died in 973, the power vacuum left behind weakened Benedict's position considerably. Otto's successor, Otto II, was still a young man and had less direct influence with Roman affairs, leaving the papacy vulnerable to renewed aristocratic control. Taking advantage of the shifting political landscape, a faction led by Crescentius I, a member of the powerful Crescenti family, staged a revolt against Benedict, with imperial authority temporarily diminished. The anti-German faction in Rome moved quickly. Benedict was seized and imprisoned in the Castel Sant'Angelo, a fortress that had become a notorious site for detention and often execution of unwanted popes. While Benedict was incarcerated, a rival candidate named Franco Ferrucci was elected as anti-pope under the name Boniface the Seventh. In order to solidify this usurpation and remove any threat of Benedict's return to power, the conspirators had him murdered in prison. Most sources indicate that Benedict was strangled to death, a common method of discreet execution in this era. His death marked another episode in the long history of papal violence during the 10th century, where the office of the Pope was routinely contested and controlled through political intrigue, betrayal, and assassination. After Benedict's murder, Boniface VII did not remain in power for long. He was quickly driven out of Rome by supporters of Otto II and fled to Constantinople with the Vatican treasury, leaving the city in disarray. Benedict's death and the brief, chaotic rule of Boniface VII are emblematic of the larger instability that plagued the papacy during this time, when spiritual authority was often subordinated to the ambitions of secular and noble interests. What do you think about that? Some pretty hardcore stuff, don't you think? Just
Having some mic problem on my desktop here. Give me
okay.
a second.
All right. But yeah, see, now this is all before Machiavellian or and all that. So you're looking at this kind of mentality, like I was saying, stretching all through the beginning of the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages, however you want to say it. I do find that kind of interesting. So now I'm so glad that we made it to that point, because I got lost there for a second. So um, let me see what we have here. Now, the Pope John the 14th is the next one. Pope John the 14th served as Bishop of Rome from the year 983 until his death in 984, during a time of acute political instability and deadly power struggles over control of the papacy. Before becoming Pope, he was known as Peter Canapanova and had served as the Bishop of Pavia. He was a trusted advisor and high-ranking cleric under Emperor Otto II, who appointed him to the papacy in what was clearly an imperial assertion over Rome and the Church. His appointment was not popular among many noble Romans, particularly those who had grown increasingly resentful of German interference in papal affairs. John XIV's position became precarious soon after he took office. Within months of his elevation, the emperor who had supported him, Otto II, died unexpectedly. The sudden loss of imperial protection left John vulnerable to Roman factions who opposed both his authority and the broader influence of the Holy Roman Empire. Chief among his enemies was Boniface VII, a ruthless and ambitious figure who had previously usurped the papacy and fled Rome after being driven out by pro-imperial forces. With the emperor gone and the political climate favorable to a return, Boniface seized the opportunity to reclaim power. In the year 984, Boniface VII returned to Rome, likely with the support of Byzantine or local Roman allies. He quickly led a coup, overthrew John XIV, and imprisoned him in Castel Sant' Angelo. There he is. John was kept in harsh conditions, and while exact details of his death remain uncertain, most accounts agree that he died while in captivity. Some sources claim he was starved to death, while others suggest he may have been poisoned or directly murdered in the orders on the orders of Boniface. Regardless of the method, his death was not natural, and it was clearly the result of a deliberate effort to eliminate him and ensure that Boniface faced no legitimate rival to the papal throne.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
Now,
cool. Right, finally.
now you have a little bit of an echo coming in behind you.
Hang on a second. Yeah, I'll sign off from my device.
Now, John the XIV's death is one of the many tragic examples from a period often referred to as the Dark Age of the Papacy, when popes were frequently imprisoned, deposed, or murdered as noble families and foreign powers battled for dominance in Rome.
All
His death.
right. Now I have my research arsenal with me. So,
Okay.
we are talking about which pope now?
Now, I have made it up to Pope John the 14th
Pope
between
John
983 and 984.
14. Okay.
Now,
Pope John the 14.
right. Now, this one is actually interesting. Him and the previous Pope, Pope Benedict the Sixth, and there's also a third player in all of this, which is very interesting.
Uh, his uh, his predecessor is Benedict the Seventh.
Well, Benedict the Sixth, though, is the one who was murdered.
Hmm.
Okay,
Oh, so you
and
skipped him, or what are we doing? We are
well,
here.
I'm just focusing on the murdered
Yeah,
pope. This is
but
this
John,
this is dead popes.
John,
This
yeah, but so you're saying John the or predecessor, one of his predecessor, Benedict
the
the Sixth, you said,
yes,
was also murdered.
yeah,
We should
he
have
was
covered him first.
murdered. He was murdered, and then after he was murdered, later on, Pope
Is
John.
John the 14 also murdered?
Yes.
How did he die?
Now, Pope John the 14th was. Now, this is. Have you ever heard of Boniface?
Yes.
Okay, Boniface is an anti-pope, right?
Mm, Boniface the Seventh. Yeah.
And there was actually a power struggle going on between these two popes and him. He actually fled to Constantinople, and the reason for that was because uh, the Germans who were in charge with the Holy Roman Empire. The German Holy Roman Empire favored Pope Benedict the Sixth,
Okay.
and after after they appointed him as Pope, um, freaking the guy who was in charge, I forgot his name, but he ended up dying, which caused a power or a vacuum in
Okay.
power in Italy. So he became vulnerable. Pope Benedict did, and that's when that's when this all happened. He came in, took power. He didn't hold it very long. Um, now the emperor was Otto the First, and he died in 973. Um, now Otto the Second was still supposed to be young, and he had less direct influence in Roman affairs, and that left the papacy vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So after that, a faction led by Crescentius the First, a member of the
Wait. How did we didn't talk about how John the 14 died? How was he murdered?
of John the 14th. That one's afterwards. He ended up dying because of he was imprisoned in in in, in the Castle Saint D'Angelo, and he was kept under harsh conditions. And they said that while exact details of his death remain uncertain, most accounts agree that he died while in captivity. Some sources claim he was starved to death, while others suggest that he had been poisoned or directly murdered on the orders of Boniface, who,
Casto Sant'Angelo. Okay, yeah, right. He was assaulted by people from the anti-Pope Boniface the Seventh.
yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
the Crescenti family. He was
So,
assaulted, deposed, and confined at Castel Sant'Angelo.
so, what are your thoughts on these anti popes? The
It happens. Actually, matter of fact, happens a few times in the church history. I think so. This was in the 10th
uh,
century.
right.
In the in the 14th century, around Saint Catherine of Siena's time, we have Pope Urban VI. Also uh, fled. Uh, he fled. He abandoned Rome, the See of Peter at Rome, and fled to Avignon because of some other anti-pope. And Catherine had to go and persuade him to come back. So, okay, so back to John. Yeah, I mean, it's not surprising. It happened a few times in history. But interesting that the anti-pope wasn't the cause of his death, right? Um,
Well, not that they can't declare it. You know what I mean? Because it's like I said earlier, like a lot of this information is just not there. So like just, most of what they're going off of is just
so
like rumors and stuff like that.
yeah, like rumors and hearsay kind of thing.
Right.
So they said he was deposed of his papacy, which is like, uh,
2 years, I believe.
it's not
No,
even a
not even a
thing.
year. It's not even a year.
You don't depose a pope, right? I mean, he's elected and he's there for life. What does deposing the pope mean? So if he's once he's deposed, who became the pope then?
That would
Yeah.
be Boniface. Boniface became the anti-pope.
Well, he's the antipope. He's not the real pope. Who's the real pope?
Well, he
Uh,
just declares that he is the pope. That's how you become an anti-pope. You go in and you just take them out of power, and you say, from this point on, I'm the pope. Come kiss my freaking ring and shut your mouth. You know what I mean? That was basically how it was.
right.
And
You're right. You're right. You're
you know what I mean? You
right.
either listen to him or you died. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, that's
Um, Boniface was only considered an anti-pope in the 20th century. Right? Interesting,
really.
right? So back then, they still consider him a legitimate pope.
They probably didn't have enough information. It is probably something that just came to light here recently, so
Hmm.
that could be because information like I've done research on other things like Shakespeare, for example. Everybody thinks that Shakespeare, they have all this information, but there's seriously very little freaking documentation when it comes to people like like Shakespeare. Like people, I mean,
So
it's like
so it says John. I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. It says John died 4 months after his imprisonment, but they do not know the cause of his death.
right,
Um, it's and they say it's either from starvation or from poisoning.
right.
Um,
Now, also, he wasn't very. They didn't like it too much because freaking he came to power because of Emperor Otto II, who was the German, I guess the German emperor, I guess you'd say, for the Holy Roman Empire,
right.
and a lot of these families and these factions in Italy, especially when it comes to the royal families, or the nobles, they they didn't like the interference that was taking place outside of Italy from these German emperors and stuff. You know that that really upset them. So when
How
they,
how did he become the pope? So uh, when Benedict the Seventh died, Otto the Second wished to enthrone a renowned Burgundian abbot as the new bishop of Rome, but Maolius refused the office. Who is Maolius? Have you read through this?
no, actually, I didn't even go through that. I went from Pope Benedict XVI to
We were just talking about John the 14th.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Before John the 14th died, Pope Benedict the
The
Sixth was the one
sixth.
who died.
Oh, but John the 14th is the successor of Benedict the Seventh.
Oh, I don't care about him. He didn't die. He didn't
He
die.
didn't die. He
Yeah,
didn't. He wasn't murdered, right? But but
whatever.
but we're talking about John, so everything relates to him and how he came into being the
Well, I
Pope
mean, he he
matters.
he apparently died an excruciatingly painful death. That's that's really what I'm getting from this. And there
But
was
but
a
but, but it sounds to me like from reading this, even up into the 10th century, they did not have a formal papal election process.
It doesn't sound like
It's
it at all.
Yeah, because the emperor apparently selected this pope,
Mhm. Well,
Emperor Canapanova.
mhm.
No, no, that's not it. No, that was his John the 14th's original name. Emperor. Who was the emperor? Emperor Otto the Second, right?
Right.
He wanted some Burgundian, but there wasn't any available. Or Malleolus, who was the Burgundian, refused. So his second option was um, this guy called Canapanova, who was then Bishop of Pavia and had previously served as Otto's arch-chancellor in Italy. Okay. So negotiation with Capanova stalled until December, at which point he accepted the papal throne. So Canapanova is the former last name of Pope John the 14th.
Right.
So then he was selected by the emperor, which is interesting. They didn't have like a mobile papal conclave even back up until the 10th century.
Well, some of these do talk about being selected by the nobles of Italy and things of that nature. So I'm seeing that like it happened on both sides too. It wasn't just like the German,
Okay.
the like the German noble or whatever you want, Holy Roman
Okay.
emperors, but that was where the real big struggle was. Is they didn't like the idea of these German Holy Roman emperors coming in and enforcing uh, their pope onto them. They wanted to select them themselves, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
and that's where the struggle really becomes. Then they start freaking killing off each other, and there's a real close tie to the nobles, the old Roman nobles from
hmm,
the ex or the the fallen Roman Empire. They still had power during that time period, real strong families. So
yeah,
it's really interesting when you look at this. Um, and you heard what I said earlier too, right? When like their mentality was really intense. You know what I mean? It was almost expected for a man to freaking
yeah,
murder
yeah,
his
yeah.
enemy. You know,
It's in the Roman tradition, right?
yeah. I mean, like, and you could just like cut the throats right in the middle of the street, and nobody'd even care. You wouldn't get arrested for it or anything. You know, just they'd assassinate people right in open public spaces. I find that interesting
Mm-hmm.
with these factions.
Um, it's so it says again Wikipedia. He died again. We said that he died a few months after his imprisonment, and then he was buried down at the old Saint Peter's Basilica.
Mm,
But then his tomb was destroyed in the 17th century during the basilica's demolition.
that's
So his epitaph was erected under the pontificate of Anti-Pope Boniface VII. Records of his death date as August 20th, 984, but does not state the cause of death.
hmm
Because Pope Boniface VII was only considered as anti-pope in the 20th century. Pope John the 15th was considered to be the
yeah.
successor of anti-pope.
Now this is number nine.
Okay, good.
This is number nine. This guy, Pope John the 15th, served as
15th.
Bishop of Rome for from the year 996 to his death in 998. His papacy occurred during a turbulent period in the history of the papacy, characterized.
Wikipedia says his papacy ended in 996, but you said he died in 998.
Yeah, in 998. Now,
Okay.
it says his papacy occurred during the turbulent period in the history of the papacy, characterized by the dominance of powerful Roman noble families and frequent political intrigues that overshadowed the church's spiritual authority. Like many of his predecessors, John the Fifteenth's reign was heavily influenced by the local aristocracy, and his role as pope was often shaped by the ambitions of the powerful Roman families that controlled much of the city's politics. Uh, there is little detailed information about Pope John the Fifteenth's life and papacy, but what is known suggests that his time in office was marked by political maneuvering rather than significant ecclesiastic reforms or achievements. He was largely a figurehead with the real power residing in the hands of influential Roman families, particularly members on the papal throne, securing their own positions of authority and using the papacy as a political tool to further their ambitions. John the Fifteenth's death occurred in a context of political unrest and shifting alliances. While the exact cause of his death is not definitively recorded, the most widely accepted account is that he died of natural causes, possibly from an illness in the year 1998. However, some sources suggest that his death might have been the result of foul play, given the highly politicized nature of the papacy at the time and the ambitions of various factions within Rome. After John the XV's death, his passing set off another round of papal infighting. His death led to the brief papacy of Pope Gregory the Fifth, but the period following John's death was marked by increasing instability in Rome. The Crescenti family, whose power had been steadily growing, sought to control the papacy and maintain their influence. Pope John the XV's reign and his eventual death illustrates the vulnerability of the papacy during this period, where the office of the pope was often subject to political machinations and ambitions of powerful families in Rome. Now, that right there, I don't think should have really been a part of it, but
Yeah.
I've heard them say that freaking there are people who claim that there's possible foul play involved in it, because this is the time period where you start hearing less and less about the underworld when it comes to all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Um, and that,
It says here he died of a fever.
yeah.
He died of a fever in 1996. So did he resign 2 years before he died?
That's something that I don't understand either, because like freaking it it says that he died in 2 years after, and I mean really it doesn't even state that he resigned, to be honest.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Hmm. I mean, it
So
says he's Pope until 990. Oh, well, no, Wikipedia is probably wrong.
uh,
It says he died in 996, but at the summaries it says he died in 998.
okay, so that's interesting.
Hmm.
Now, what's up with this other guy who Pope Gregory the Fifth? Have you ever heard of him?
Gregory the Fifth apparently was the emperor's cousin.
And that would be the whole. Would that
Otto
be?
the Third's cousin,
Oh,
Bruno.
okay, makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
because they're talking about this character being actually Pope John the XV, was actually. By the way, it sounds to me as he was given power by the Roman noble families.
Mm.
And like I said, there was a power struggle going on there between the Roman noble families and the German Holy Roman Church, or
I
however,
don't.
emperors.
So, a couple of sources tell me, Gemini and ChatGPT says that he died of an acute fever. So there's no proof of foul play, or no proof that he was actually murdered or anything like that, or a victim of violence, anything like that.
Well, I'm thinking maybe that where this is coming from was the shift between him and then between this Pope Gregory the Fifth. You know what I mean? The fact
Mm.
that he was out, and then this Pope Gregory the Fifth was in. You
Okay.
know, and then plus the increased instability in Rome. That would be another thing. There's probably some kind of power struggle that was taking place. So the environment right there in Italy must have been brutal. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it says there's no proof that he died of violent cause like many of his predecessors during that time.
mhm.
Okay, let's move on to the next guy.
Now we come to the 10th one, which is Pope Boniface the Sixth,
Okay,
1896.
Boniface the Sixth. Too bad this thing doesn't show me which which number of Peter's successor he is.
He is in 1892
1892. Well, that's
or
in the
96.
century.
I'm sorry, 18. No, 892.
Oh,
96.
896. Okay,
896.
so it's just right after. So the successor is Gregory the Fifth, and then after that is. Uh, are we talking about Gregory the Fifth?
Oh, if you got Gregory
996. 996 is when he
Gregory the
started.
Fifth would be better actually, because we can go on to Pope Boniface afterward that words, but if you got information on him, because that's what I asked you a second ago, if you
Yeah, but
know
we're talking about. Well, I mean, he's just a direct successor of.
was
He's
there.
the Bruno. He's the Bruno that the emperor's cousin that we were talking about there.
Okay, so there's nothing
He was,
significant.
yeah, he wasn't murdered.
Okay, see, that's what I'm
We're talking
saying. We need to focus on these dead
Oh,
popes.
well, he died suddenly. It says he died suddenly, not without suspicion of foul play. Imagine that. This is the emperor's cousin.
Yeah,
On February 18, 999.
I'm telling you, man, they're killing each other off left and right. It's just
They're
a
killing
big
the dogs.
murder.
They're eating the cats. This is like they're killing each other like cats and dogs over there.
This is
Right.
like Middle Ages Scarface. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
like when you were transferring from one camera to this one, I was telling everybody, I was like, think about it like this. You know how everybody talks about like the mafia today. You know what I mean? And they don't understand like this is the lifestyle they came from when they were in Italy. You know what I mean? Like that was their way of living during that time period when they first came to the United States. People didn't understand that. You know what I mean?
Gregory the Fifth. Yeah. Yeah.
So like what we call criminals, that's how they did their business. That's how they lived their lives in Italy. You know, it was very very brutal.
He's a member of the Salian dynasty, cousin of his cousin of Emperor Otto the Third.
Yeah,
Yeah, how did he die? I mean, he got whacked by his own court. Or,
under suspicious circumstances. You read it, you
yeah,
know.
yeah, not without suspicious circumstances. All right.
Now, now we have number
Where's the
10,
next
which is
dude?
we have Pope Boniface the Sixth, uh,
Let
in
me
the
see
year
here. So
eight.
next thing after John the 15th is Sylvester the Second, and then we have John the 17, and then we have John the 18, and then Sergius the fifth, fourth. Where's
Now
Boniface? What the year?
Boniface is 896.
Oh, that's before that, man. You're not going in
Yeah.
chronological order at all.
Well, apparently, number 10 was important for Pope Boniface the Sixth because Pope Boniface the Sixth had an extremely short papacy. Okay, uh,
So Gregory the
he's
Fifth, John the 15th was his predecessor, and John the 14th was his predecessor.
hold on.
Benedict the Seventh. We're
Pope,
going down to well, there's a few
now
more
Pope
generations yet.
Boniface the Sixth only served as Bishop of Rome for 15 days in the year 1890.
Boniface the what? Six?
The sixth.
Six. Boniface the Sixth. Boniface the Sixth.
Now,
Boniface the Eight. I'm like, it's not even on here.
no,
It says
the sixth.
16,
That
Nikolai Boniface the Eighth, Nikolai the Fourth, Honorius, Honorius. That is in 12. I don't see him, man.
have
Pope
you? Have you ever heard of Pope Formosus?
Boniface the sixth. Are you sure he's the sixth? Oh yeah, I have him here.
He came after the death of Pope
896.
Formosus, and
After the death of Pope Formosus, yeah?
his election was part of a series of rapid papal changes during this chaotic period. Boniface Six's
Right.
papacy was largely uneventful, with little recording about his actions or
Uh,
contributions to the church. It is believed that he was a member of a powerful Roman nobility, and his brief rise to the papacy may have been influenced by the political struggles within Rome at the time. However, his tenure was cut short as he died under mysterious circumstances. Just
Man,
as
you're
a,
just reading. Uh,
just just a short time after his election. Now,
I'm going to share something to make it less boring for the viewers.
now,
Keep
um,
reading. Keep reading what you have.
the cause of Pope Boniface's the sixth death is not definitively known, but most historian accounts suggest that he died from illness, possibly from a stroke. Although there are some rumors that he was poisoned. Given the chaotic nature of the period and the factionalism that marked the politics of Rome, it is difficult to rule out the possibility of foul play, though there has been no concrete evidence to support this claim. What is clear is that his papacy was far too short to leave any lasting impact on the church or its development, and he was succeeded by Pope Stephen VII, whose own papacy would be marred by its own violence and political intrigue.
So he was only Pope for 15 days.
You know,
uh, and
then Stephen,
Stephen the Sixth,
yeah,
he was forcibly ejected. So there was a synod held by John the Ninth, who we're talking about here. People historians describe. Papal historian Caesar Boronius described him as a disgusting monster, guilty of adultery and homicide. Wow.
well, that was kind of a common theme though back in those days. Like, um, you know, most of these guys, man, were doing
He
some.
was elected as the result of riots. Who elected him? Who elected him? Let's find out.
Now we're going to be able to get into more of the exciting areas uh, after I run to the bathroom real quick. If you
Yeah, you
want.
go ahead. I'm going to do a little bit of research to see who elected Boniface the Sixth.
Now, after that, we're going to go into Pope Celestine V, and
Pope
that's
Boniface the Sixth was elected in April 896 by a Roman faction amidst the popular tumult and riots that occurred shortly after the death of his predecessor, Pope Formosus.
hmm
At the time, there was a struggle for control of Rome between supporters of Armulf, the German emperor, and those of Lambert of Spoleto. The faction that secured Boniface VI's election were partisans of Lambert of Spoleto. Reports also indicate that the Roman people supported his election. However, Boniface's papacy was extremely brief, lasting only about 15 days. His election was later declared null and void by a synod in Rome held by Pope John the Ninth in 898. This was due to Boniface having been twice previously deprived of holy orders as a subdeacon and as a priest, and not canonically reinstated before his election. So he was uh, like he was subject to some sort of canonical penalty when he was quote unquote elected pope by some faction. So this later then was declared null and void by a synod. So yeah, um, so I mean, he was, which means he was never a pope in the first place, wasn't it? But still, in the order of Peter's successor, he's there. Um, what else do we want to know? Uh,
Yeah, I had to go grab a cup of
who,
coffee too, so I went and grabbed me a coffee.
who are these factions that elected him, even though he's so unpopular? So did you? So while you're away, I just read how his election was voided, right? Because he wasn't even a priest in good standing order.
Really?
Yeah, he was twice previously deprived of holy orders.
See, now
Uh,
that would make sense. Either that or he was what would be a good word for it? Defamed. You know what I mean? Like they defaced him, basically. I mean, because I could see that happening. Give a reason
well, I
for.
mean, but the record, this is historical records. By the time of his election, these things have already happened.
Oh, I guarantee you, there's nothing historical about these documentations.
I
Okay.
mean, the synod, bishops convened, right? So they're starting to. This is the start of something formal here, some formal process here. Why didn't they have a synod up before this to vote for an election and instead have these uh, uh, emperors or nobles influencing the papal elections, right?
Hmm.
So incidentally, I just read about how the conclave was formalized, right?
Hmm.
And apparently, it wasn't formalized. It wasn't formalized until 1274, when
Oh yeah.
Pope Gregory X issued a papal bull called Ubi Periculum, where he describes a method for electing the next pope. Uh, yeah, and so before that, um, Bishops of Rome was chosen in a manner similar to other bishops. Local clergy and Christian communities of the laity would participate in the selection. So that
Well,
mm,
we've already established how that was determined.
yeah,
So,
well, I mean, we didn't. We said some of the nobles were involved in the election, but then how are they, legitimately doing it? And so we're finding now here is the part of the local church community, right? The
well,
local clergy and
I think a lot of that also was violent as well. Like you can't deny the fact that there was a violent past that was taking place here. People there were factions that were fighting amongst one another. So
yeah,
I
but
don't
but
think legitimacy was actually like a
no,
big
no, but
issue
I
there.
can see, I can see how this could be a legitimate process, right? You have a local church, a local bishop is responsible for their community in that local group of
Right.
churches, and then the community was responsible for electing the head shepherd, right?
Yeah.
Either the local priest would, or with the involvement of the laity community, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and this seems perfectly fine. The process, it says, involves, discussion, prayers, consensus, and then acclamation, which is similar to what we have with the formal conclave now. But
I'm
uh,
sure. I'm sure there was a little bit of murder. And,
no, yeah. But then, when you get the laity involved, of course, there's like personal ambitions and bias
yeah.
comes into play, right? So that could be the start of how these rich and powerful, noble men or women in those Christian communities
And
influencing the election. But
what
then
year?
how did it get to the emperor electing now?
What I took from it is they were
Ah,
forcing their pope onto the papacy. You know what I'm saying? It was like this is who the pope's going to be, and
wait. Let me read more. From the fourth century to the 11th century, there was influence of secular rulers, right? There's
right.
imperial confirmation is what they call, following a legalization of the Christianity by the Emperor Constantine in the fourth century. Roman emperors began to take active role in papal elections. This involved this involvement grew, and by the sixth century, Byzantine emperors, after the fall of the Western Roman Empire, often asserted their right to confirm the election of the Pope before he could be consecrated.
Hmm.
And this imperial confirmation was intended to ensure political loyalty and stability. Yeah. At some point during the periods of strong imperial control over Italy, no, so this is just a summarization of all the little specific cases you went over, right? Um, so strong imperial control over Italy, for example, by the Holy Roman Emperor in the 10th and 11th centuries, or even powerful Roman noble families, like we saw with the Pope that you read.
Hmm.
Secular rulers went beyond mere confirmations and directly nominated, heavily influenced the choice of the Pope. All right, there we go. So that's how we saw that some of the popes were chosen by the emperor. This often, and in one case, there he even picked his cousin to be the next pope. This often led to the popes who were politically aligned with these rulers and sometimes resulted in corruption for the appointment of the unsuitable candidates.
Don't you love how they say that this resulted in corruption? I think it's a little bit more than just corruption.
No, it's technical.
Like, oh, we don't need to be talking about the murder stuff.
Wait, all right, okay. Let's. I guess that's a little bit of the how the papal election
Now,
process.
when you were talking about what year was it that they started doing the
12, 1274 is Pope Gregory the 10th
okay, so
instituted the
the
formal
next
process.
the next death actually was in 19 or 1294, and that
Okay,
is Pope Celestine the Fifth.
Pope Celestine the Fifth. Yes, 1294. That's the actually.
No, he was
He was elected in July 5th. Okay, go ahead and read his life story.
okay. Pope Celeste the Fifth, born Pietro del Marone or Maroni, is one of the most unique and tragic figures in papal history, largely due to his brief papacy and the extraordinary circumstances surrounding his death. Elected Pope in 1294, Celeste was a hermit and ascetic monk who had lived a life of extreme piety and solitude before being unexpectedly thrust into the papacy. His election was the result of a long and contentious papal vacancy following the death of Pope Nicholas IV in 1288. The College of Cardinals had been unable to reach a consensus on a new pope for nearly 2 years, and
Mm. Wow.
eventually Celestine was chosen largely because of his reputation for holiness, even though he had no desire to take on the papal office. Celestine's papacy, however, was ill-suited to his temperament. He was not a politician or administrator. He struggled with the complexities of governing the church, particularly the political intrigue and factionalism within the papacy. His
Now this.
reign. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. No, finish.
His reign was marked by confusion as he was heavily influenced by powerful advisors who sought to use him for their own agendas. Eventually overwhelmed by the demands of the papacy and realizing he was not equipped to handle its complexities, Celestine made the unprecedented decision to resign from office.
Mm-hmm.
In December of 1924, or 1294, sorry,
12.
just 5 months after his election, Celestine V officially abdicated, citing his inability to cope with the pressures of the papacy. His resignation was the first time in over 700 years that a pope had voluntarily stepped down. After his resignation, Celestine withdrew to a life of seclusion in a remote mountain cell. However, his retirement was short-lived. Pope Boniface VIII, who succeeded him,
Mm-hmm.
feared that Celestine might become a figurehead of opposition to his own papacy, and he had the former pope imprisoned. Celestine was confined to a cell in the castle of Famone, a fortress in the mountains of central Italy, where he was held under harsh conditions. During his imprisonment, Celestine's health rapidly deteriorated, and his once vibrant spirit seemed to fade as he languished in isolation. The exact cause of his death on May the 19th, 1296 is uncertain. Some sources suggest that he died of natural causes as his health had been severely weakened by the conditions of his confinement. Other accounts, however, imply that he may have been intentionally starved or mistreated by his captors, perhaps in an effort to remove any threat he might pose to the papacy of Boniface VIII. The lack of clear documentation regarding deliberate neglect or even assassination, uh, although no definitive evidence supports the claim. Now, starvation is something else that we both need to recognize too. Like that could be a form of murder as well. Like
Yep.
they were very, very. I mean, that was a common way of killing people. Put them in a cell and just forget about them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something else that I've noticed in a couple of them that it was they were put in a cell and they died from neglect and starvation.
Yeah. But while all the other popes that we mentioned seems to have some like dark history, this
Oh
pope
yeah,
is a saint, man.
yeah.
This pope is a saint. He was canonized in 1313.
Hmm. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
Well,
So
the if you notice too, out of the list, this is the first one where they even uh, talk about him being actually elected pope. Like all the other ones, they didn't even mention the fact that they were elected. But this one says that he was elected pope in 1294.
well, yeah,
Uh,
that's after the papal conclave was instituted. So yeah, makes sense.
And then they even say his election was a result of a long, continuous papal vacancy.
Uh-huh.
You know,
Is this like one of the you mentioned in your reading? This is one of the longest papal conclaves ever, wasn't it? 2 years was it?
hmm
Let me see.
the College of Cardinals had been unable to reach a consensus on a new pope
2 years,
for
yeah.
nearly 2 years,
Wow.
and Celestine was chosen largely because of his reputation for holiness.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
so we've got a pope here that ended up dying because he was too holy for his own good.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Yeah.
so that that kind of brings out the whole reason behind why they have these conclaves. Is my take on it. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
That's one of the reasons why I was. Well, actually, it's not the entire reasoning behind it. Like I've always been curious about the murders that were involved
Right.
in early Italy, not like Rome, but like it after the Roman Empire fell, there was a lot of stuff going on there, and you'd have to be insane to freaking try to go through that and try to figure out in your head what was taking place. You know,
Mm.
that's worse than trying to figure out the Middle East. Being
Yeah.
honest,
Yeah.
it really is. And I mean, I've been doing research on the Middle East, like ancient history and stuff, but I've been holding off on doing this because this is just craziness.
Well, and it makes sense, right? You look at the history of the Roman empires and how it persecuted Christianity, starting
hmm
with Jesus, right?
hmm
They put him to death using the most terrible, horrible form of punishment ever.
We'll see. I mean, I'm starting to see though that like with the Italians and and the Greeks, to be honest, I mean they were
Mhm.
harsh people. You know what I mean? Like they didn't play around. First of all, like um, they had all of these grandiose ideas and beliefs. You know what I mean? But they didn't follow their own rules. You know what I mean? Like they they would talk about God in one hand and freaking have a knife in in their other hand. You know, hidden behind their
Sure.
back.
Sure.
They were very vicious. Um, it's just insane. It's like I was saying, I've been wanting to get into this, but I haven't had the enthusiasm to be honest, because this is insane stuff. It really is. Machiavellianism, or Machiavelli.
Mm.
He's just one story. Okay, out of uh, out of all of them. His story is nothing significant, really. He wrote a good books and stuff like that, but when it comes to that life and everything that pertains to what took place during that time period, I mean, these are like unscrupulous acts, one right after the other. It, it, corruption, murder, all of it.
Mm.
Underhanded dealings. You had to pay off freaking this guy to get this done so that this would happen, so that this would happen. It was all about the business deal,
Mm.
you know. Um, and it didn't matter if it was actually religious or just business. To them, they didn't see a difference between them. That's kind of what I've gotten from it so far.
Machiavelli was sort of like an anti-Christian atheist kind of person, wasn't he? Like he criticized all religions,
Mhm. And
criticized Christian religion especially.
well, it's not just that. Like he would encourage these rulers to do corrupt, um, corrupt things, corrupt evil things, and he
and justified it somehow, right?
right justify the fact that they did it because it was how they retained power. Okay, in order to retain power, you had to do this. There should be nothing wrong with murdering so and so as long as freaking you remain powerful. You know,
Yeah.
so there. I mean, that was their mentality. You know what I mean? He was just a little fish in a freaking huge pond.
Mm.
You know, I mean, there were tons of these people running around doing the same thing he did, but I think that's something that's really important for people to understand. It was very ruthless during that time period. And don't get me wrong, there were good spiritual people. You know what I mean? But
Mm.
don't be fooled by all that. I think that this conclave thing is actually something they had to do. They were forced to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was like at some point it needs to be a formal process, needs to be
Mhm.
established. So
You need to put an end to the killing.
yeah, yeah,
You know, and the power struggles and stuff of that nature. So I
yeah.
find that really interesting. So
Well, it started out as a reasonable process, right? I can see where local churches, community members, of course, they would have something to say about who their next shepherd should be. If everything was in the perfect world, everybody would have no greed, and everybody would have the best intention for the community at their heart.
hmm
But human nature being what it is, and they're tempted by greed, power, and other worldly desires. So of course it's going to get corrupted. Um, so yeah, this papal conclave is definitely something that was needed.
well, I
Uh,
believe that the real big problem was Charlemagne. You know,
mm,
um, because like that was when Charlemagne came into power, and you had he became the first Holy Roman Empire. He went to Rome, and they christened him and made him Holy Roman Empire Emperor.
Emperor. Yeah.
You know, and
Was he French?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe he was, but he actually owned or ruled over like everything that was considered the Holy Roman Empire at first. You know what I mean? And um, the deal with it though is like when they did that, I think that created a freaking power struggle because like I've said this before on other streams where you look at the way the rest of Europe is when it comes to Rome. Okay, everybody makes it out like Rome is this, you know, um, golden age for Europe, when in reality it wasn't. I mean, the Romans were brutal, murderous people who freaking conquered every step of the way. You know what I
Sure.
mean?
Yeah.
And now you look at the way countries like France and England and all these countries do. They've got like freaking those big arches sitting up like it's some big monument to this great empire that was the beginning of civilization, and they don't realize that's not the case. These were brutal murderers that came into your country and freaking murdered your children and took the other ones for slaves. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And but they've idolized them, and I think that's what happened there was the fact that Charlemagne, to to establish power, he went to Rome and was made into Holy Roman Emperor,
Mm.
and they they idolized Rome. They had these ideas in their head that Rome was where it all began. You know what I mean? And even to this day, they still have that mentality.
And
But
interestingly, Charlemagne was the first emperor that was crowned by a pope,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yep.
And that's a cool practice that dates back way to the Old Testament, where the judges or the prophets, right, would crown a king, just like King David was picked by, was it, who the prophet was, um, but he was picked right from the group of his brothers, right, out of the crowd
Mm-hmm.
to become the king. So now we see, starting in the year 800 AD, they're
Yep.
resuming that tradition, starting with Charlemagne.
Pope Leo the Third.
Yes. Pope
Pope
Leo
Leo.
III was the one that crowned him.
Mm-hmm. And I brought up something too, and I forgot the reason why I freaking why he stuck out in my head. But when it came to the Machia family, okay, yeah, Medici, um,
Medici, you said? You
the
said Medici.
The Medici family, um, Pope Leo the 11th
House
was
of Medici.
he is freaking actually straight from that family, and then
Mm.
Pope Pius the fourth
Yeah,
was
Pope Pius the Fourth right here. Oh,
and,
this family is the the fruit of four popes. They produce four popes.
you know, and Catherine de Medici from 1547 to 1559
Two
uh,
queens of France.
was a queen of France.
Yeah, yeah.
Catherine and Marie. So that's this family. What I was saying, it was just as you was coming in, and I read that, or you had to straighten out your phones. I was reading this, and I said these families were very powerful. You know what I mean?
Right,
They weren't just like centered around Italy. I mean, they had a lot of influence in France too. So um,
right. Queen of
they
France, Grand Duke of Tuscany, Duke of Florence. Yeah, you're right.
you know.
This is like the matriarch of Italy.
So, and the banking system too. The Medici family were known for their banking. Like you'll hear a lot of conspiracy theorists try to link the Medici family in with the Rothschilds and
Uh,
uh,
okay.
and you know,
Mr.
stuff like
Robot
that.
would love to comment on that.
Yeah, oh, I guarantee it, he would. He probably fell asleep from
Yeah.
smoking all that DMT. So,
Let's hope he will watch our stream and find out we're bat mouthing him.
well, I mean, he's kind of getting used to it by
Yep.
now. Like, you know.
Medici Money, uh, book written by Tim Parks. Metaphysics and Arts in the 15th Century Florence. Okay.
Well,
So they're
I,
they're like the equivalent of what family in the U.S. right now? What
no.
what like the Kardashian?
Uh, well, today I don't think there really is any kind of families that could compare to them.
Politically, uh, or the uh, what the hell is that lady that ran for president against Donald Trump? Bill Clinton's wife,
Hillary, Hillary.
Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's pretty powerful.
Now the Medici.
Medici, yes.
Yeah, they started up the Medici Bank in from what
Hmm.
I've heard, is they were among the earliest businesses to use the general ledger system of
There you go,
accounting.
right here. Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty innovative.
In double entry
So
book.
they invented the general ledger system.
Hmm.
That's pretty cool.
And they are possibly the ones who actually helped finance the invention of the piano,
Okay.
which that
Well,
is,
no way. This is like no way. This is too late. Is this in the
well, the family. Um, I mean, they're
oh,
not they're not specifically saying which person within the family did it. You know what I mean? It just says that they were possibly responsible for helping finance the invention of the piano.
okay, okay. Piano
Uh,
was invented in 17th century, so makes sense.
and
I
I
thought it would have been there way before that, but okay, interesting.
now for me, I mean, I find that kind of suspicious too, because or this whole thing with this family suspicious because they claim that they went broke in the 17th century too, and I just don't see a family being that powerful for that long, just all of a sudden running out of money.
Mm,
You know, it doesn't match up for me. Yeah, just I
yeah.
think that's kind of suspicious. Now maybe they could have like uh, married off to the point where family members just kind of broke off into different factions or something, you know. But I don't see them just running out of money, you know.
Yeah.
It just doesn't sound right. Now maybe uh, it could have been the money could have been broken up among family members all through time and dispersed or something like that. And then finally, some poor sap that still had the name Medici was left there with a big fat belly and a can of beer, watching
Mm,
TV in a trailer park.
mm.
Am I doing good?
Yeah, you're doing good.
Okay. I was trying to keep this respectable, you know.
Yeah, you were. I'm here to keep you respectable,
I
but
know.
my observation is that you are quite professionally objective.
Well, I mean, I know how important your religion is when it comes to the Catholic Church. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So I'm not going to be that guy. You know what I mean? You can have Mr. Robot do that for you, but I'm
He,
not going
he
to.
he does it in a weird, sweet kind of way. You
Yeah,
know, it's really damn annoying.
it's
It's like he's killing you sweetly, yeah, kind of thing. He's sweet talking you to death. You know, well,
nah,
he's like he's commenting these casually nice kind of comment, but at the same time, it's like it cuts like a knife. Yeah,
he's something
yeah,
else.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like okay. So how much we you've gone 2.5 hour.
Yeah, I think
So
we've covered all of it. Now this is for the levity part, where we were actually just hanging out and saying our little bit and everything. And
well,
I think we've
just to sum up your murderous pope. We went through John. Oh, what was it? Which one was the most brutal? John the eighth was apparently the most brutal murder. He was poisoned, and then when the poison
yes,
didn't do the trick, he was
yes, he was bludgeoned by.
bludgeoned by a hammer or
Well,
a
it it,
club.
it could have been a hammer or some uh, uh, blunt forced object. So I mean,
Yeah,
this is like the
that's
true.
crazy. Yeah.
This is the true brutality right there. That's straight out of Scarface, or not even. Well,
Yeah,
well, it's not
this is
Scarface.
like
Which
the
one is
Wild
it?
West.
The mafia one. There's Scarface, and then there's I cannot believe I forgot the damn name of the show, dude. It's
Uh,
like a freaking all time classical
Soprano,
too.
Soprano,
Um,
not Soprano.
but anyhow, yeah, it's straight out of that. That's about the brutalest one I've seen there.
Yeah.
At least, what was it, Pope Stephen? He ended up getting a pillow to smother him out. They
uh,
were nice enough to do that,
uh,
so that was good.
no, no. No, the one that got the pillow was John the 10th.
John the Tenth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Stephen the 6th or the 7th, whichever that was. Uh,
yeah.
oh, it was crazy. Stephen the 6th or the 7th. His death followed the infamous cadaver synod, where he had the corpse of his
Oh
predecessor,
yeah.
Pope Formosus, exhumed, tried, and mutilated.
What do you think about that? I was thinking before you came in, I was like, dude, Tan, I need to get his take on this.
Yeah, it's pretty brutal, man. This guy, so Stephen the Sixth, why would he do that? Yeah, I think I might have when I was studying Christian history, early Christian history in university. I might have ran into this. Forgot why he did that though. It's kind of pretty gruesome. There was some reason why he did that, but
Well,
still.
did you notice like for Moses, okay, with Stephen, um, he ended up being the one that uh, took away his power and took his place,
Hmm.
apparently, right? Then it goes on later down here and talks about Formosus. I believe we brought him up again, didn't we? Uh, where he was involved with uh, freaking not Pope John the 11th, maybe,
Hmm.
or something like that. He came in there and oh wait, was it? It could have been Stephen the 7th or 8th. And but he can't, comes back into the story again later on. You know what I mean? And I believe it was Pope after Pope Benedict when we were talking about all that. But it just seems weird when you look at all this how one person turns around and dethrones or takes away the power of one of them, and then another one steps in and does it to him, and then it just goes so forth and so forth. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah,
Just one right after the other, they just take power away from each other and they do horrible things to one another.
yeah,
Which so I'm completely satisfied with determining the evil that took place during this time and the murders that were involved. So
yeah.
I've gotten my fill of it.
You're full of it.
I've gotten my fill of it. I know I'm full of it. There's a difference. So
Uh,
so
yeah,
I just figured that this would be the best way of celebrating a U.S. Pope from Illinois coming into power in the
yeah.
Catholic Church. You know,
So talk about that a little bit. Why would this be a good celebration of a new pope from Illinois?
well, you just have to know Illinois to understand. Like this is something that is only a person from Illinois would understand what I'm talking about. Okay, like
Wow.
you guys are in for a ride of your life, dude. That's all I gotta say. Like you,
I I know of a few cardinals from Chicago who are pretty decent and holy men.
well, they're not popes.
They were not Pope, but they were still pretty good cardinals.
Well,
Francis George was one of them.
what I've heard is he is a good guy, but trust me, I mean, you're probably gonna see a lot of character from him. You're not gonna see the conventional pope.
But you know the his wearing of the papal stole, the traditional papal stole, where Francis didn't. Right, Benedict wore that same stole that Leo wore. Right, but
Hmm.
Francis, when he came out, he was wearing what was he wearing? He was just wearing white or something.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
so
he was always rebellious too, though. Like he didn't really want to take on the robe and wear it everywhere he went. You know what I mean? So you always seen him wearing. He actually
and
preferred
he has
wearing
his reason.
garb.
He wants to be a simple man, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Like he
but
actually wore like his regular garb
mhm,
rather than wearing what the Pope wore.
mhm.
So
But this the Leo the 14. So wearing that traditional garb kind of
mhm.
signals his traditionalism that he wants to maintain, right? And he's maybe being a pope totally changed in him into a totally different person. But so far, he looks like he's a quiet, mild mannered person, right?
wait, wait until he starts talking to you about Garth.
Yeah. All
You know, you're gonna
right. Let's wait and see.
you're gonna hear about Garth Brooks, and now
I don't.
he
I don't
might.
expect to hear him speaking English too much, to be honest.
No,
Maybe once in a while, but once he's there, he's stuck with whatever language the
how old is
Vatican
he, by the
speaks.
way? How old is he?
He is 70. How old is Leo
105.
the 14?
Now, if
He
he's
is 69 years old.
okay, so he might be a little too old for the Harley Davidson.
Yeah.
Maybe I
I
don't
don't
know.
think he's that much of a rebel from. Well, he didn't spend a lot of time outside of Chicago, right?
Well, Chicago is weird in their own way
He
too.
might have grown up in Chicago, but he's living in Peru in the past 15 years.
Uh,
How long?
See, and Nancy even tried to pull that Perusian thing. You got to understand something. You can go to Peru all you want. You can go anywhere you want, but
You still Chicagoan? Chicagoan?
Illinois, period. This state does something to
Tell
your
me about
brain.
Illinois. What is it?
Illinois
I don't
is
understand.
Illinois is probably the reason why people believe in aliens.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. Like if you want to see a human being that is weirder than freaking aliens, come to Illinois. I mean, they are weirdos. These are people that freaking okay. Like you ever hear of the trailers with the freaking uh, what do they call those pink freaking those
Pink pink Volkswagen van.
no the little birds they put out in their yards.
Oh, the flamingos.
Pink flamingos out there and the little
That's
flower
in
freaking
Florida, isn't it?
things. No, dude, that crap started here in freaking Illinois, man.
Okay. Okay.
And besides having that, you need to also put like the junk car that's sitting over to the side. The Camaro
Okay.
that never gets freaking fixed or built.
Okay.
You
They
know,
still have. They do that now.
yeah, they still do that crap, dude.
All right, that's cool. That's like 40 years ago.
You know, so you're getting like the
So what are you saying though then? That
that's
this guy is like he's like old ancient back in the Stone Age kind of guy?
well, that's not really Stone Age here. Like that's just I mean that's the way it is, and he's got to deal with that kind of crap
Right, right.
because he's a Catholic priest. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah. So he
freaking,
can't be much of a rebel if he's a Catholic priest,
well,
right?
he's got to put up with it. I
Right.
guarantee you that messes with your head. I guarantee you, if he's not involved in it, having to deal with it as a Catholic priest, he's messed up in his head from having to deal with it because you're
Yeah.
gonna you're gonna you're gonna see a lot of different things because there ain't nothing
Do
worse.
you look? I mean, he doesn't look American to me. Look at this.
Well,
Pope Leo the 14th.
there's a lot of Hispanics in Chicago too, though.
But he's like French though. He's a European. He's got a European.
Oh, whatever.
Yeah.
That's not. That's not. Oh wow, he is.
Right.
He's white as white can be, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Honky.
But he doesn't he look like Mexican a little bit, Spanish a
No.
little bit.
No.
Yeah.
I would say that he looks Vietnamese.
No, come on. There's no resemblance at all.
No.
Look at his nose.
You
That's
say
not
his
Vietnamese
nose. You say
nose.
his nose.
Yeah, that's not Vietnamese. That's not an Asian nose at all.
No, he's not.
I
He's
can't
not.
zoom in on this thing.
Now he's straight up 100% Illinois, and he's even got that shit eating grin, dude. That's
Okay.
that's what we call it here. We call it a shit eating grin. Like he's got it. That's Southern Illinois, if anything. He probably isn't even from Chicago. He's just lying to you guys.
No, I mean he's been living in where is that in
Well, I
uh,
mean, he's got status. He's got something that he has to. You don't let people know you're from Southern Illinois, okay?
really?
If you're from Southern
He has a
Illinois,
shame.
you have to go to Chicago to make anything of yourself because when people find out you're from Southern Illinois, freaking, it's
Okay.
over. They don't want nothing to do with you. They're like,
Uh,
put that dude back and leave him alone.
Hmm.
You see? So
so is it Chicago the only city that's good enough for the rest of the United States in his
you could probably get away with Effingham, but that's really pushing it.
Mm.
Now, Chicago, the only reason why Chicago gets any kind of respect is because they're full of Democrats, and you know how the Democrats are. They're just liars, dude.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
he had to go to Chicago so that he could actually get a name for himself. Because if he was to be down here, freaking, they would have never allowed him.
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Because they know better.
But where's he born? Born in he's a Chicagoan.
That's
He
what
was
I'm
born in
saying.
Chicago.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
We just had 2 hour conversation on this, okay? We know. Make it look good. Make it look good.
He's not born in Chicago.
Yeah, he's probably born in Chicago. That's where that's probably where he's from. So
Yeah.
we got to take care of.
It even says here his mother, Mildred, is a native of Seventh Ward of New Orleans.
Oh wow, yeah. So New Orleans, he could have a little bit of that Hispanic blood in him.
Yeah. Yeah, see? That's a
Peruvian,
nose.
Peruvian, and chicks from Peru are hot, dude. Just so you know,
Oh, yeah?
they're beautiful women.
Forgot what they look like.
I'll tell you what, they'll put a Brazilian chick to shame.
Uh,
Peru has some beautiful
you've been
women.
to Peru?
I've
He
known
was
a
the
few.
robot been to Peru.
I've known a few of them actually. A friend of mine, she her family came from there. Her name was Macy. I hung out with her in Kansas City,
Okay.
and I knew her for a few years. I mean, every woman in her family was beautiful. I mean, there was like no ugly duck. Well,
Hmm.
maybe she was an ugly duck, but she wasn't that ugly for an ugly duck. You know what I'm saying? It was
Okay.
like, I mean, that's how they are. They're beautiful women.
Okay.
Now the men, they aren't really all that great. They're
They're uglies.
oh yeah, you got
All
some.
men are ugly.
Well, you got a lot of ugly men from Peru. But they got hot chicks. You know what I'm saying? So you can't. I mean, it kind of makes you shut up. You know what I mean? Because like freaking, they're married to a hot chick. What are you? You know, you're
Yeah,
some
yeah.
fat slob.
Maybe
Freaking.
they don't think the chicks don't think that their men are that ugly. You know, maybe they think they're sexy.
That's kind of that's kind of thinking optimistically. I think. I think you need to step away from the computer programming and take on a little. That was supposed to be funny.
Yeah, I'm laughing.
So yeah, it's cool. I mean,
All right. You got your fill, so all
yeah,
right.
we I've got all my stuff covered. Um,
Yeah.
I'm are you good with everything we've gone over so far?
Yeah, I think so. I guess the thing I want to make is that throughout the church history um, there the church has gone through dark times in history, and there have been series of bad pope. Not even the ones that are murdered, the one that was got away. They live a very worldly life, right? Some of them did. So, uh, but somehow, the church survived. So that's my hope that the Catholic Church will continue to be protected by the Holy Spirit, like He did in the Acts of the Apostle when He actually spoke up in the midst of the what was it, the council. It was the Council of Jerusalem or something that was convened in the Acts of the Apostle, and we actually heard the Holy Spirit speak. So uh, I'm, I'm of the belief that He continues to guide the church until now, even speaking silently, and just like He did in the early days of the church. And then we will continue to have some good popes and some bad popes, but we're promised by Jesus that the gates of hell will not prevail against His church. So,
All right. So, with that being said, uh, let, could you let everybody know how they can find you and
oh
where you're
yes,
at?
my name is Tan Hai Tran. I am frequenting the Mind's social network these days. That's my main home, minds.com/th2tran.
There you go. And you can find me on minds.com too as Roger underscore Hanson. I'm on Element Matrix chat as well. And so is Tan. That's where we usually hang out. So if you guys want to find us on there, you can find us. They've got all these weird names, but mine is on Element. It's live with Roger Hanson. You can hook up with me on that one, and we can send you to the rest of them if you're interested in joining all the other chats that we do. Besides that, I am on X as um, Roger Hanson at ROGLOL1973, and I usually stream on Rumble, X, Twitch, DLive, Kick, and YouTube. Tonight, I can actually put this on YouTube without editing, which is so cool because to be honest with you, these last two episodes just been hectic for me. I had to go through and make sure Mr. Robot's freaking behavior was appropriate. So I'm happy with this one. I'm really happy. we actually had a pretty legitimate freaking stream. You know what I mean? Where we
I mean,
just
it could be boring without Mr. Robot, but he put this spice in the in the stream, but sometimes it does get too spicy. So yeah.
I'm just happy that I don't have to freaking edit the last the last episode. I had to edit from Friday night all the way up until Sunday night so that I could
Woo.
post it on Monday, and then I streamed it on Monday too to all the other ones because this was exclusive for um,
Rumble Premium.
Rumble Premium last week.
Mm-hmm.
So after I edited, I ran the original one again on X, Twitch, D Live, and Kick uh, as a pre-recorded live stream. And like during that stream, freaking Mark Wojcicki was watching it and getting all fired up and crazy and shit. And I was debating, should I say in chat, this is pre-recorded or should I just be quiet? You know? He's wanting to jump in and say something. And I'm like, ah, damn, dude, you know. So that made me feel bad. And
Cool.
I also want to say I am sorry to everybody who watched last week. I did not mean to freak out and start calling people Nazis.
You did?
Yeah, I did. Well, you know, when I talk garbage politics for too long, just something happens to my brain, dude. I just all of a sudden I start freaking out, dude. You cannot sit and talk garbage politics for 5-6 hours straight.
Yeah.
You know, it does something to you. So
Yeah.
that's why I really like this episode.
I can't sit and talk politics for an hour straight. Migraine.
That's why I like this episode. We had a good conversation about popes that were murdered in the past.
Nice conversation.
You know, I mean, that's like this is the dead popes episode, and the episode theme is Dead Popes Society.
And one of them happened to be a saint, so
right.
It's some hope for us.
Do you get what I'm saying here? Me and you are a part of the Dead Popes Society, not the Dead
Yeah,
Poets.
I get you.
Yeah, see, that was kind of cool, wasn't it? Like how I did that.
Right.
Okay. So with that being said, I'd like to say thanks to everybody for watching. If you liked what we did tonight, please like, subscribe, share, make comments. Would love to see your feedback, hear your feedback. That's very important. Besides that, it's good for the algorithms. If you make comments on streams, it generally shows the platform that you are an active channel. So if for nothing else, just make a comment so that it shows the platform that we are active and we are streaming. Besides that, I love to have conversations in the chat section. I love the live chat, don't get me wrong, but I also like to actually have conversations in the comment section. So feel free to make comments down there. And like I say, I don't say it every time, you know, just respect each other when you make those comments. Don't be a dick to each other, you know. Respect everybody's points of view and their way of looking at things, and we'll all get along. So then I'm going to end this stream. Thanks for being here, Tan.
See you, everyone.
And
See you next time.
All right, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.